The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
In October 2022, the consumer price index increased by 0.5% compared to the previous month, while the annual inflation rate amounted to 10.6%, according to the National Statistics Office of Georgia, Geostat. With 84 votes, one against, the Parliament adopted the legislative project on the creation of a new public law legal entity, the Anti-Corruption Bureau. The amendments were voted on in the first reading. TI Georgia has released a statement regarding the creation of the Anti-Corruption Bureau, stating that the proposed reform does not respond to the fourth recommendation issued by the European Commission, which asks the country to strengthen the independence of the anti-corruption agency, bringing together all key anti-corruption functions. According to TI Georgia, the planned reform does not include either bringing together key anti-corruption functions or the creation of a guarantee of real independence, and it does not intend to fight against high-level corruption. The National Bank of Georgia, NBG, hosted the fourth Sustainable Finance Forum. It was organized in collaboration with the International Finance Corporation, IFC, a member of the World Bank Group, in partnership with the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, SECO, and the IFC facilitated Sustainable Banking and Finance Network, SBFN. The forum brought together over 300 attendants from 55 countries across the globe, including senior representatives from EU and SBFN member countries, senior officials of central banks from different regions, local financial institutions, international organizations, private and public sector representatives, universities, and other stakeholders. This is The Checkpoints. I'm Elena Guangilashvili, author and the host of the show, and the Checkpoints team is ready to give you news and analysis you need on business and economics. Georgia's economy grew by 8.8% in September, according to the preliminary data from the National Statistics Office of Georgia, Geostat. As of the document, economic growth amounted to 10.2% in 9 months of 2022. In September, growth was observed in the following sectors: transport and warehousing, information and communication, construction, tourism, processing and mining industry. A decrease was observed in the fields of activities related to real estate. According to Geostat, VAT taxpayers' turnover amounted to around 12 billion lari in September, which was around 20% more compared to the previous year. Here's some analysis of the economic growth rate in Georgia coming from Sebastian Molenius, Regional Director of the World Bank in South Caucasus.
The last 2 years, in fact, we've seen incredible growth, and I think this year we're projecting 8.8% growth. I even think it'll be higher moving forward. You're absolutely right. I think next year we do have some strong economic headwinds that will be confronting all of us, including Georgia as well. Part of that has to do with a likely recession in Europe and some of the other neighboring countries. We expect further economic deterioration in Russia and some of the other countries as well. And of course, this will impact Russia, an open, liberal market economy that requires and is dependent on trade, on tourism, and when the economies around Georgia are suffering, certainly that will have an impact on Georgia as well.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili said the domestic high economic growth rate was expected to be maintained with the year closing with double-digit figures. We are maintaining high economic growth rates amid the current geopolitical challenges and tension. The Georgian economy grew 10.2% in the first 9 months of 2022. This is unprecedented in the whole of Europe, the PM said. The government had also added Georgian exports had increased by 37% in the reporting period, while income from exports had reached USD 4 billion. The government has presented a support scheme for energy projects. As Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili stated at the government meeting, the new support scheme includes assistance for the construction of 1,500 megawatt power plants in the next 3 years by auction. As you know, especially the war that is going on in Ukraine has revealed another difficulty that states have: energy security and independence. Georgia, of course, has quite large resources, especially hydro resources, so this resource needs to be used as wisely as possible. This is our main priority, and we will be working in this direction for the last few months. We have also had consultations with the International Monetary Fund. This scheme that we are presenting to you has been agreed and passed and will be given an official form in a few days. As you know, in recent years, the so-called guaranteed purchase scheme has been suspended and memorandums have been issued for about 800 megawatt of hydropower plants, although some have started construction but no contracts have been signed. The second issue is that the fate of new projects was also unclear. Investors in general needed more clarity, so the new scheme is as follows. From the state side, for 15 years after the power plant is put into operation with the so-called CFD agreement on the price difference, the scheme involves the support of energy projects, which we will offer to investors. The new support scheme includes support for the construction of power plants with a total capacity of 1,500 megawatts over the next 3 years by auction. This does not include the 800 megawatts I mentioned and the big projects in total. By promoting the construction of 1,500 megawatt capacity, we expect an investment of about 2.2 billion USD, to which 800 megawatt projects and other large projects will be added. With the reservation that all these projects will be implemented, we expect an investment of at least 3 billion USD in the energy sector, said the Prime Minister. Here is one example of an investment that is already contributing to Georgia's energy system and its energy security. This is a Shuakhevi power HPP that will increase the generation of power energy by almost 5% in the country. It will increase the energy security of Georgia and facilitate the quest towards energy independence. Project is funded by the following three largest financial institutions: European Bank for the Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, Asian Development Bank, ADB, and the International Financial Corporation, IFC, of the World Bank Group. Shuakhevi CEO visited BMG TV's Business Morning last week. Here are some interesting comments from the show.
Every quarter we have our board meetings here in Georgia, and our board of directors visit Georgia. And whenever they arrive here, they make it a point that they will meet the government officials to have cooperation and discussions on future prospects. Definitely, I believe this meeting with the Prime Minister was very much successful, and the officials exchanged their views about the energy sector, energy market in Georgia, and future prospects, the challenges that we are facing, and the possible mitigation plans. And I think this is very important, that when the officials from the investors are coming and discussing with the government officials, it is a good opportunity to discuss the developments regarding the investments. Yeah.
Georgian engineers are basically managing the Shuakhevi station, and I want to know what are the complications of the process. How complicated is the process to find the qualified engineers in Georgia?
Yes, of course. As promised, Shuakhevi HPP is employing almost 98% of Georgian engineers today, and all the operations and maintenance is being carried out of these Georgian engineers. Most of the engineers, they were working with us since construction phase. We have trained them since construction phase, and then we have given them opportunity for long-term employment. Whenever it comes for the new engineers, we also employ them, give them training, and we always continuously work towards their development. This is the one thing. And today they are operating and maintaining this plant very nicely. But when it comes to a recruitment of new Georgian engineers, it is a bit challenging. Because that skill set, I think it is lacking, and certain policies should be made by the government to improve this skill set. Because if we look at the Georgian policy for next 10 years for the development of renewable sector, this is very important that this skill set must be improved, and certain policies, if they are made, I think it will be good. We, as the private players in this sector, we are also trying to develop these skill sets by providing the internship to the students. There are challenges, yeah.
As far as you mentioned the training and retraining processes and your individual engagement to create qualified employees team that will work with you and in other companies as well. Are you interested in engaging more women, and are women showing more interest to be engaged?
Yeah, I'm proud to mention this, that in Ajaris-Kali Georgia company, more than 50% of the managerial positions are being held by women employees. And they are holding the positions of functions like commercial, financial, environment, CSR, communication. So it is very proud thing, I would say, that this is a major percentage of women are handling these critical positions. But definitely we are lacking in the technical field. So I would like to encourage women to come in technical positions, and we would be very happy to employ women employees on our technical fields also.
A corporate responsibility, accountability issue. This was a very important issue. There are some brilliant videos about it, and we always had different feedback from the people who are under the interest of Shuachevi team. So what is happening in terms of corporate responsibility?
If we look at the value system and value base of Ajaris-Kali Georgia company, we are driven by the values from the two major joint venture companies, which is Tata Power from India and CI from Norway. So we have a very strong value-based system, which is one of the things is care for people, care for community, care for environment. So these are the very three important factors. Since construction phase, we have developed our CSR strategy and policy, which mainly focuses on the skill development, employability, generation, infrastructure, and education field. So since then, we have not only employed many people, like more than 1,000 employees were employed during the project phase. Now during operations phase, we are employing more than 100 people. So not only that, we are also working with the municipalities to engage with communities on day-to-day basis and have developments in education, in infrastructure development, knowledge development, skill development. And we have implemented many projects like funding of small business startups, then infrastructure like building of school buildings, bridges, street lighting, and all that stuff.
Increased production this year exceeded recent years, but can we say what is the target? What can be the target result at the end of the year? What is your plan to achieve?
Yeah, for sure. Like this year's plan is around 420 gigawatt hours, and we have already generated 380 so far. So if the hydrology remains the same for next 2 months, definitely we will cross this plan. Actually, we are more than budget for now, and then we will definitely cross this target this year.
Let us now proceed with green bonds. Last week, the panel discussion was held in Tbilisi Marriott regarding the issuance of $80 million worth of green bonds by the Georgia Renewable Power Operations, a company owned by the largest Georgian private equity firm LSE-listed Georgia Capital. Our reporter, Georgia Aronia, attended the event and talked to the representatives of international financial institutions, large Georgian corporations, and the public sector about the bonds, renewable energy, and the investment climate.
Last week, the representatives of international financial institutions, large Georgian corporations and public sector gathered in Tbilisi for a panel discussion about the issuance of the $80 million worth of green bonds by the Georgia Renewable Power Operations, a company owned by the largest Georgian private equity firm, LSE-listed Georgia Capital. The bonds in question have been issued by the Georgia Renewable Power Operations, GRPO. The company owns and operates 4 hydropower plants and the only wind farm in Georgia. These 5-year green secured notes have been issued to the Georgian Stock Exchange in what is the first domestically listed green bond and the largest bond to be listed on the Georgian Stock Exchange ever. The notes are USD denominated with 5-year bullet maturity and carry a 7% coupon. The bonds were issued and sold at par value. Among the topics Business Media Georgia discussed with the representatives of international financial institutions was the importance of the green aspect of the bonds.
The green aspect is important for all of us. It's for all of our survival. EBRD is very keen on financing as much green as possible. We have internal targets for that, which in Georgia, it's quite easy to meet those targets and we very often exceed them. So the green is of key importance also for the attraction of the market.
It is important to see large-scale green bond emissions. We have seen this tendency for a long time now, as the green economy is important for the world. Earlier, the benefits of such emissions were not evident to the Georgian companies, but for the last several years, Georgia has been developing in this direction. There are two Eurobond emissions, one by GGU and other by the Georgian Railway. We understood that investors are more interested in Georgian bonds rather than classic bonds. This is the first emission on the Georgian market that donor organizations and other investors are very interested in. At the same time, this is the first emission in Caucasus, which showed that a green economy is of crucial importance. We think that this emission will serve as an example for other companies.
Georgia has excellent resources, hydro resources. Wind particularly is fabulous in that it's complementary. When it's not raining, the wind is blowing, really gives Georgia an opportunity to address its energy needs, minimize the imports, which are increasingly expensive and complicated at this point in time with geopolitical impacts in the region, and lets it use domestic resources and offer affordable energy to the end users.
The issuance of 80 million USD worth of green bonds by Georgia Renewable Power Operations is crucial for several reasons. Firstly, because it is the largest issuance on the local market with an unprecedentedly low price for the region. Additionally, these bonds are green. If you pay attention to global trends, you will see that the market capitalization of green bonds amounts to trillions of US dollars. The transfer of this Western tendency to Georgia is important too. It reflects that GRPO and the country as a whole are determined to the long-term sustainable development.
80 million USD green secured bond offering on the Georgian Stock Exchange is crucial not only for the development of the local capital market, but for the improvement of the investment climate in the country. We shall not forget that a huge part of these bonds was purchased by global financial institutions.
The investment climate in Georgia right now is unfortunately impacted by things that goes on around us over which we have no control. Many investors here are very happy with what's happening. Any country can always improve. So there are of course things that need to be done to continue the reform agenda, and we are very happy to support it, partly through our work through the Investors Council.
I think that the country has done a phenomenal number of reforms that makes it an attractive location. It's continuing to recognize where additional reforms are needed and where things need to be strengthened to give private sector confidence and comfort. So overall, I would rate it as, relative to many other countries in the region, a very stable, interesting and attractive place for private sector investors, particularly when there's stable regulatory frameworks and legal arrangements that provide predictability.
The involvement of international financial institutions is crucial for Georgia's development. Ever since gaining back the independence, the IFIs invested billions of dollars into Georgian development. Business Media Georgia had the opportunity to ask the representatives of international financial institutions and large Georgian corporations about their future projects.
We would like to continue to support renewable energy development, diversification of renewable energy, but we also support infrastructure and corporates, both local and international investors, and financial sector sustainability.
We are celebrating the first issuance of green bonds worth 80 million US dollars on the Georgian market by Georgia Renewable Power Operations aimed at the development of the energy sector. This is a very important deal for Georgia, as it plays an important role in the development of the energy market and attracting additional investments. Additionally, we should mention the interest shown by the international financial institutions which participated in the deal. Their interest, of course, was sparked by the green aspect of the bond. I would like to congratulate Georgia Renewable Power Operations, its parent company, Georgia Capital, and the whole country with the great achievement.
Definitely more renewable energy, hoping to support wind, as I mentioned, hopefully solar PV as well. Selectively, we would look at hydro, recognizing that it is a dominant source in the market and an important source of clean energy. Moving away from energy, and because I cover infrastructure, Also interested in looking at transport, logistics opportunities, the port sector, potentially private rail, anything that's led by the private sector, recognizing again the geopolitical situation in the country, the middle corridor opportunities, and the important location that Georgia has and its ability to really be an important player, both for domestic companies as well as regionally.
The issuance of the $80 million worth of green bonds by the Georgia Renewable Power Operations, which the company issued together with TBC Capital and Galton Taggart, is an important step for Georgia. As experts say, it will set a precedent for other companies to follow the suit.
Some more news in the economy coming for the checkpoints right now.
Georgian economy grew by 8.8% in September, according to the preliminary data from the National Statistics Office of Georgia. As of the document, economic growth amounted to 10.2% in 9 months 2022. In September, growth was observed in the following sectors: transport and warehousing, information and communication, construction, tourism, processing and mining industry. A decrease was observed in the fields of activities related to the real estate. Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili on Monday said the domestic high economic growth rate was expected to be maintained within the year, closing with double-digit figures. The government administration cited Garibashvili as saying the current 10.2% growth was unprecedented in Europe in his summary of figures of the past 9 months at the weekly government meeting. We are maintaining high economic growth rates amid the current geopolitical challenges and tension. The Georgian economy grew 10.2% in the first 9 months of 2022. This is unprecedented in the whole Europe, the PM said. The government had also added Georgian exports had increased by 37.4% in the reporting period, while income from exports had reached $4 billion. Government has presented a support scheme for energy projects. As Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili stated at the government meetings, the new support scheme includes assistance for the construction of 1,500 megawatt power plants in the next 3 years by auction. The new support scheme includes support for the construction of power plants with a total capacity of 1,500 megawatt over the next 3 years by auction. This does not include the 800 megawatts and big projects. In total, we expect an investment of about $2.2 billion, to which will be added 800 megawatt projects and other large projects. With the reservation that all these projects will be implemented, we expect an investment of at least $3 billion in the energy sector, said the Prime Minister. 8,082 permissions granted were issued in January-September, up by 8.8% compared to the previous year, according to the data from the National Statistics Office of Georgia. As of the document, 77% of total permits have been issued in 4 regions of the country, namely Tbilisi, 50.8%, Mtskheta-Mtianeti region, 11.3%, Kwemo Kartli region 8% and Imereti region 6.9%. It should be noted that in January-September 2022, permissions were issued from the construction of multifunctional residential complexes, hotels, trade facilities, industrial enterprises, agricultural objects and other buildings. The relatively large share of the permissions granted hold the multifunctional residential complexes. Deputy Minister of Economy Gennady Arveladze said on Tuesday that Japanese investors were interested in Anaklia deep water port project. According to him, the Japanese were also interested in investing in the field of energy and named TEPCO as an example. We offer them to make investments in the logistics, although many companies are also interested in investing in Anaklia port project. Energy is also one of the sectors in which companies want to make investments. Company TEPCO is one of the investors in the field of energy in Georgia, said Gennady Arveladze. The Minister of Economy Levan Davitashvili announced a few weeks ago that the Abu Dhabi Ports Corporation of the United Arab Emirates was interested in the development of the deep-water port of Anaklia. AD Ports Group itself is a state-owned company under the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. According to the minister, other companies have also expressed interest in the port. Tbilisi City Hall will no longer purchase 200 units of 80-meter buses with a loan from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Tbilisi Mayor Kaha Kaladze announced on Wednesday. Instead, the budgetary funds will be used to purchase new buses. According to the mayor, the procurement procedures will start in a due course. Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili on Monday said this government had plans to allocate about 20 million GLR to subsidize the costs of necessary for maintenance and cultivation of hazelnut in a bid to promote domestic production. Coming at the weekly government meeting, the announcement was made amid damages caused by Asia's stink bugs to farmers and decreasing price trend on the product internationally. Garibashvili said the appearance of the pests in the country in the 2017 had significantly reduced domestic production of hazelnuts while also hitting the quality of the product. Last August, the price per kilogram hazelnut was in the range of 6-7 GLR, while this year it ranged from 3 GLR to 4 GLR per kilogram.
Kutaisi International Airport has resumed flight operations following the completion of runway rehabilitation. The first Minsk-Kutaisi flight was performed yesterday. The budget of the rehabilitation project was 8 million lari, which was covered by the operating company of Kutaisi Airport, the Union of Georgian Airports, from its own revenues. The rehabilitation works were carried out by the company Black Sea Group. Flights were operated from Tbilisi Airport for 3 weeks during the rehabilitation period.
Mr. Varadi, welcome to Aviation Talks, and it's a great pleasure having you here today.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Last time that we met and we held the interview, it was in December 2020, during the very harsh pandemic. And now we entered into the post-pandemic period. When you analyze the crisis, what did you learn from this crisis? And was your strategy effective during the pandemic?
I mean, absolutely. But we learned a lot. We learned a lot of ourselves. We learned a lot about the challenges and how to best deal with the challenges. I mean, clearly one of the main outcomes of crisis management during the last 2.5 years was all about flexibility and adaptivity. We had to adapt, we had to change, we had to be flexible. I remember when we nearly grounded the whole airline and we couldn't fly, but 2-3 months later we were flying nearly 100% of the capacity. And I never thought that we would ever fly to China, flying cargo. We did it 130 times. I never thought that we would be flying to the US, repatriating people, and we did actually a couple of times. So we undertook actions on challenges which we never contemplated before. And the fact of the matter is that if you look at Wizz Air today, we are 35% larger airline, larger business than pre-pandemic. At that time, back in March 2020, we had 119 airplanes flying. Today, we have 171. So it's not only that we recovered from COVID, but actually we are a much bigger business because we used this time strategically, being agile and looking at investment opportunities to actually invest into new markets. We entered into London Gatwick by acquiring a slot portfolio and based aircraft there. We entered Italy in a large scale, having more than 20 aircraft now based in the country. We entered Albania. This summer we operated 9 aircraft based in Tirana, and we opened up a new airline in Abu Dhabi together with the Abu Dhabi government, Wizz Air Abu Dhabi. So we have been using this time not only as a way of managing the issues and crisis managing the business, but also looking at the opportunities arising from that and to invest against those opportunities.
According to recent analysis of ICAO, the global passenger traffic has recovered by 80%. and the revenue of airlines reached 70% globally. What is the recovery rate at Wizz Air in terms of particularly revenue?
Yeah, so we are roughly 135, 140%. So we are doing a lot better than the industry overall. Basically, I could say that with regard to the incumbent markets where we used to operate prior to the breakout of the pandemic, we are back to pre-pandemic levels, kind of 100% recovery, both in terms of capacity and passengers, and it also translates into revenue. And we added a number of new markets I mentioned, and with that, as an airline group, because now we are operating 4 airline licenses, we are up 35% versus pre-pandemic levels. So the 4 airlines are 2 European airlines, Wizz Air Hungary and Wizz Air Malta. We have a UK airline playing contingency on Brexit, Wizz Air UK, and as mentioned, we have the UAE airline, Wizz Air Abu Dhabi.
As we can see, the price of Wizz Air stocks are quite down nowadays, which could be vulnerable for airline. So can we expect, is there any possibility of consolidation with Wizz Air with any major player?
No. I mean, in reality, if you look at the shareholding structure, we have a strategic investor, Indigo Partners, in the US, and Indigo is unavoidable in any kind of speculation or any kind of plans which could affect the company's position. I would rather say that this is the time to buy for people. I mean, clearly the market is reacting with fears of unpredictability in the future. I think European aviation has been quite vulnerable. I think every share price of any airline has been down significantly. We are closest to the fire at the moment with regard to the war in Ukraine, and I think that kind of makes the market nervous. But if you look at the fundamentals, the fundamentals remain very strong for the business. So I think the future prospect of Wizz Air remains very intact, very strong. We have the largest aircraft order of the best available airplane in the world, the A321neo airplane. We have been diversifying our network footprint through the various investments into markets, and we have a very strong, very agile, very adaptive organization that is able to deal with any sets of circumstances, being culturally agile, being able to bridge cultural differences. So I think we are in a very good position for the long run.
We see tremendous demand in the aviation market, in particular in passenger operation in the post-pandemic period. But on the other hand, we see clear challenges that aviation sectors and airlines are really suffering from. So what kind of challenges do you point out, and what could be solutions to tackle those challenges in the long run?
I mean, I think it is a bit of a double-edged sword, to be honest. I mean, the current challenges are more kind of macroeconomic related. I mean, being a European airline, we are exposed to the dollar. The euro is weak to the dollar, or the dollar is strong versus the euro. I mean, that creates this financial exposure. Fuel price, oil price is up. I mean, we used to have fuel being 30% of our cost. Now it's half of the cost. We are seeing inflationary pressure kind of creeping into the sector through wage inflation, monopoly infrastructure charging. We are seeing all of that happening. I mean, some of it is cyclical, and you know, it feels almost like a perfect storm at the moment that everything is hitting at the same time. But if you look at fuel or foreign exchange, they tend to be very cyclical, so they go with the cycle, so they could change. Also, the current situation offers significant opportunities for an airline like Wizz Air. We have been very keen on preserving liquidity. We have 1.6 billion euros of cash on hand, what we can use to continue to invest in business opportunities. So this is almost like, you know, you are in the forest and you bump into a bear. You don't have to run faster than the bear, just faster than the other guy next to you. And I think we are well positioned with that regard. So we still look at market opportunities, investment opportunities, and they will come. And they, you know, just a very recent one is one airline went down in Romania, and Romania is one of our home markets, and we were backfilling their capacity, and we deployed significant capacity, number of aircraft we moved into the country. opened up a number of new routes. So we will still pursue those objectives.
We talked about challenges that the airline facing, fuel price, insurance rate, conflicts that we will talk about a bit later, which really impact the ticket price. Do you really share the opinion that the time of cheap flights is over?
No, absolutely not. I think it's wrong. It's not true. Again, we are in a cycle. We are in the down cycle, if you want to put it that way. The industry facing a lot of inflationary pressure all over the place, but most of it is cyclical. Foreign exchange will change over time. Fuel goes up and down depending on supply and demand. So I'm quite confident that maybe this is a situation for a couple of years that the industry will be inflated on cost and as a result will be inflated on ticket fares. But over the long run, I think low-cost flying remains prevailing in the industry. If you look at aviation, the development of the sector, it has become increasingly commoditized. In commodities, lowest cost wins, lowest cost prevails, and this is what we are focused on to make sure that by innovating technology, we bring in the best available in the industry. With that, to derive the most economic benefits and also the environmental benefits of being a green operator in the industry. And on that basis, we can continue to grow the business and we can continue to enhance our franchise with the consumers. And I don't think that, as a matter of fact, we have ever been in a better position than nowadays, because simply that kind of a gap, that technology gap, that efficiency gap, they've just opened up in our favor versus the balance of the industry.
Unlike to your airline, many airlines are suffering because of shortage of aircraft, staff that they fired during the pandemic, and also they're the same problem with airports that cause some delays, and overall it really have negative impact. What do you think, how will it shape in short term and how will it impact the industry as a whole?
I think there are probably two issues. One is how the supply chain is operating at the moment and what impact that makes on airlines like ourselves, and two, what we can do as an airline to counter some of those effects. The supply chain has been struggling. We had a very bad summer from an operational perspective. Actually, demand was very strong. People wanted to fly. They were back from the pandemic and they really wanted to travel. But from a European perspective, over 6% of flights during summer got cancelled because of supply chain issues. All the reasons you mentioned, lack of staff, shortage of staff in air traffic management, in airport security, in ground handling, you name them. And of course, we were not immune and we were affected by that, and we had to cancel a large number of flights. I mean, historically, we performed at a rate of completing 99.7% of our flights. So we only cancelled 0.3%. This summer, we cancelled over 6%, so like 25 times more flights. And we were not an outlier because that was the industry rate as well. So it was that bad because of the supply chain performance. Now, I hope that the supply chain will continue to evolve and will improve, but I don't think this is going to get fixed completely when we are entering into next summer. As we speak today, we are fine. No cancellations really, other than weather or these extremes which would have affected the business otherwise. In that case as well, but it is now a more calm position. Now, what we can do as an airline, and that's really the question, that now we are altering our operating model to make sure that we are more resilient, we have more buffers, we have more reserves in the system, that we don't expose ourselves to the supply chain to the same extent as before. Before that, we have been maximizing efficiency in a way we operated the airline, but that required a perfect operation of the supply chain. But once that's not available to you, obviously, you will become a victim of your own operating model. So this is what we are affecting, this is what we are changing. I'm very confident that our investments will bear fruits and will work. We are already seeing the early results. It essentially means that we are over-investing. We are over-investing into headcount. By the way, during the summer, we didn't suffer from headcount shortage. We had the pilots, we had the cabin crew, and the way we achieved that was that we invested into those workforces early enough, and we carried unproductive resources, if you wish, before we were able to ramp up. But all the others, or most of the others, just invested when they needed to invest, but it was too late. But even if we were totally invested, but because of the dysfunctional operation of the others, we were unable to benefit from that.
Interesting. We definitely need to talk about conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I know that both of markets were very good markets for Wizz Air, and I know that two of your aircraft remain in Kiev, and one was taken safely from Lviv. How did this conflict affect your airline, and what do you think? How will it shape whole sector in the future, taking into account that many aircraft have been nationalized by Russian authorities?
Right. So obviously there was a direct effect when the war broke out in February. We had aircraft on the ground in Ukraine. We had people on the ground in Ukraine. We were unable to move the aircraft, but we were able to move our people. So essentially all our people moved out of the country, and we gave them jobs across our network. So basically every one of our former Ukrainian employees remained Wizz Air employees working for the company in other bases. And I think it was just showing kind of the culture of the company, the spirit of the company, that we have people in need as needed. Indeed, we flew one aircraft out of Ukraine, but we still have three there. So those aircraft are non-operational at the moment. By the way, they are not damaged, so they are fine, but we cannot fly them out, obviously, due to security reasons. But as soon as we can, we will. The bigger issues arising from the situation are around kind of the economic impact of the war. And the resulting sanctions, issues like high energy price, high fuel price when it comes to aviation, a much accelerated inflationary environment which may lead into recession, and that could affect spending power of people in those sides. So those are more the issues what we are seeing as consequences of the war. In terms of the very impact of the situation that was managed over the first few months, we had 7% of our capacity planned to be operated to Ukraine or Russia. Obviously, we had to remove all that capacity, and we reallocated that capacity across our network. But that was done like in the first 3 to 4 months. So now it is more the carry forward of the economic, of the longer-lasting economic impacts of the situation.
Let's come back to Georgia, as we are in Georgia with great Georgian wine. You had really remarkable return back to Georgia. When we talked first time in interview, you promised that you would have come back to Georgia, and you really did. You reopened the base in Kutaisi Airport, and there was a almost complete resumption of destinations, and even new destination was added from Abu Dhabi to Kutaisi, which is really positive. What really triggered this decision of returning back to Kutaisi?
Well, we were very keen and eager to reinstate our operations, our route network. As said, we invested proactively into that return by hiring people, training them up for flight, and even if we were not able to fly them because of prevailing restrictions imposed by governments, they were ready to go. And once the market opened up and restrictions got removed by governments, we were ready to jump. We consider Georgia as a long-term strategic market for the airline, so we were very keen on coming back, and we did so ahead of our competitors. And I think this is just showing our agility and our ability to move quicker than the market, to be more adaptive than the market, and this is clearly a competitive advantage of the business. And of course, we exploit that competitive advantage whenever we can. Interestingly, if you look at really outcome of the pandemic in terms of our market share in Central and Eastern Europe. Pre-pandemic, Wizz Air had 17% of the market in Central and Eastern Europe. Today, we are 23%. So that's quite a significant move. I mean, we improved our overall Central East European position by 25-30% during the course of the last two and a half years. And that's quite a remarkable achievement. And it's just showing that we are more reliable, we are more resilient, we can invest more than others, and we can move faster than others.
When can we expect third aircraft to be added to Kutaisi base?
We are considering it, and I would like to get it back as soon as possible. I mean, obviously, it is a little complicated world we are into right now. High fuel price because of the closed airspace affecting Georgian operations. Obviously, it's a longer flight, more cost to flying. We were talking about the exchange rate, etc. So I think we need to see some of this dust settling down before we can firm up decisions. But as said, we are actively looking at this option, and whenever we can trigger it, we will. Also, you have to put that in context of aircraft deliveries. I mean, Airbus is not delivering at a rate as contracted, so some of the deliveries are delayed. So we have to reallocate aircraft on that basis. So it is a little complicated, as said, but you should count on Wizz Air as de facto the national carrier of Georgia. We are here for your country. We are here for the passengers of Georgia, and we are here for supporting the country's ambitions in terms of placing yourselves on the map of tourism of the world. I think you have a lot to offer. Great wines, very importantly, but also a lot of nature, a lot of culture to the world, and we are very pleased and very honored to be one of your partners.
In the recent period, you set up a couple of companies in Abu Dhabi, in Malta. You obtained AOCs, and there are some rumors that you also plan to establish a company in Saudi Arabia. Is it not time to obtain also Georgian AOC and set up your own airline? Particularly, you said that we can consider your airline as our national airline. What do you think about this matter?
Well, I mean, what I think is that you need to consider the size and scale, the complexities, and the regulatory framework available to you. I mean, if you look at the UK, for example, we needed to have a UK airline because of Brexit. In order to secure route rights outside the European Union, we needed to have a local airline licensed by the United Kingdom. If you look at Abu Dhabi, Abu Dhabi remains largely a bilateral market. As a result, if you want to have an operation in Abu Dhabi, you should have an airline. Malta is slightly different. Malta is more like managing the scale that the Hungarian operation just became too big and too complex, and it's important that we create focus on decision making and delivery of the operation. So that was kind of bringing Malta to life. And yes, we are looking at Saudi as announced that we are on the path to scale up our presence in the country. We just launched 23 routes to Saudi, and we may do more in different forms in the future. And in that context, we need to look at Georgia and other possible opportunities. I think the size and scale is important, just because of sheer complexities and investment needed for the return of those investments. Georgia is a liberal country, so Georgia offers us a regulatory framework and legal framework that is very much accommodating our requirements. So we don't really need a Georgian airline. I mean, most of the things we can do for Georgia, we can do within the current regulatory framework, within the current operating platform.
Don't you think that with your own Georgian company would be easier to turn Kutaisi Airport into the regional hub, that you could manage even transit flights? I know that it's not part of concept of low-cost airlines such as Wizz Air to operate transit flight, but to establish Kutaisi Airport as a real hub.
Yeah. I think the focus at the moment is to bring more aircraft, to fly more point-to-point services, expand the route network on that basis. Once we achieve something a lot bigger than where we are today, that maybe we can think of other initiatives, but for the time being, I think for the next few years, we are focused on that.
Due to closure of the runway in Kutaisi Airport, Wizz Air is operating from Tbilisi Airport until end of this month. Do you plan also to add Tbilisi International Airport to your network in the future?
Well, if we get better cost out of Tbilisi Airport, we would certainly consider it. But at the moment, Tbilisi Airport is one of the most expensive airports in Europe, if we consider your country in that context. So right now, I think Kutaisi is a lot better alternative for our business model to operate from. We are very keen on delivering the lowest possible cost, and with that, to apply the lowest possible fares to the market. We can much better achieve that in Kutaisi than in Tbilisi. But if the cost environment changes in Tbilisi, we would certainly consider it.
Wizz Air recently started expansion towards the east, and you set up a company in Abu Dhabi, and of course we all know that there's huge potential. How do you see the development of Eastern, also Asian routes and destinations, also in the context of Georgia?
Yeah. I mean, we are seeing huge demand for Wizz Air. I mean, we are in discussion with almost every country you can imagine in this part of the world, and they all want to have more Wizz Air, more routes, more bases, more airlines. So we have become very popular, and that popularity, I think, is largely driven by the facts and the empirical evidence that we are a very resilient business model. We can certainly differentiate ourselves at least three ways from the rest of the market. First, we bring very low fares to the market, and with that we stimulate traffic. So we create the tourism industry, we create traffic, we enhance the franchise of flying more than anyone else. Two, we are very resilient. We are pretty crisis-proofed, if you want to put it that way. This industry has gone through only crisis over the last 3 years, COVID and now the war situation, and we are around, and not only that we are around, but we are a lot bigger airline than prior to the first crisis, the COVID times. And three, we have resources to invest. We have airplanes on order, being delivered and will be delivered in the next 7 or 8 years, and we have cash, and not many airlines have any of these. So, we are resilient, we have the capacity to invest, and we have a proven track record of actually making an economic difference for countries or regions. And as a result, obviously, we have become strategically interesting and attractive to all these countries.
And at the end of our interview, I would like to ask you about your plans, not only in Georgia, but also globally. What our viewers can expect from Wizz Air in the future, domestically and also globally?
We are very clear on that we are seeing Wizz Air to become a 500 aircraft airline, essentially tripling the size of today by the end of the decade. That's very ambitious, but it's very doable. That implies roughly around 20% growth each year. This is the compounded growth rate, what we have delivered since the beginning of the company over the last 19 years. And we're seeing that by now we have developed distinct competitive advantages in the market, what we can embark on. It's the aircraft, it's our ability to access technology, it is the diversified geographical footprint of the airline, and it is also the diversity and the agility of the organization to move around and go with the flow when it comes to opportunities of the business. So we're seeing that we have developed great strategic assets in the business, what we can exploit further for growing the business. In terms of the geographics, Central and East Europe will remain our home run, and we will be very keen on exploiting every opportunity arising in this region. We have made selective investments in the West, and we have made selected investment in the East. I think you will see us expanding further in the East, which we find very exciting, and as we just discussed, we are seeing a lot of opportunities. With regard to Georgia, as said, we feel that we are de facto the national carrier of the country. We want to be part of the society, part of the country, and we want to contribute to your development. And whatever is economically and financially rational, we will do to continue to invest, to bring more aircraft, more routes, more low fares, more seats to the market, employ more people, and contribute to your overall developments of the country.
Thank you very much. As always, it was very interesting analysis and lots of expectation and positive feedback. I wish you best of luck to Wizz Air, and thank you again for being with us.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
More on business this week in the Checkpoint Special Weekly Business Wire.
Ajara Group and U.S. International Development Finance Corporation signed a financial agreement on Tuesday. The agreement provides support for rehabilitation of the historical Sanatorium Arazindo in Abbasumani and its development under the brand of Rooms Hotel. The total cost of the project is $14.45 million USD, of which Ajara Group will invest $5.85 million USD and take a long-term loan of $8.6 million USD from DFC with the support of financial consulting company Wings and Freeman Capital. A 76-room hotel will have a restaurant, bar, conference and meeting spaces. The project will create up to 100 jobs and will offer high-paying employment prospects for the local population, which will contribute to the regional economic development. It's planned that Rooms Hotel Abbasumani will receive guests from 2024. A new restaurant was opened in Tbilisi Wine Museum located in Old Karasla. The founder of the restaurant is Levan Kobiashvili. Levan Kobiashvili notes that the idea of creating a restaurant Arkivi emerged after visiting the location, and the ancient building immediately became a source of inspiration. The founder of Arkivi also says the restaurant is located in Tbilisi Wine Museum in Old Karasla. The idea of the concept is due to its location. We are a country of wine, and it was interesting for me to open a restaurant in the wine museum, says Levan Kobiashvili. One of the main directions of Arkivi is to offer high-quality wine to its customers, according to Jabat Zimistarishvili, the sommelier of the restaurant. The prerequisite for the success of this project is a good chef and good sommelier. The tandem of all these is the most important. Wines from 4 or 5 settlements will be paired with one dish in Arkivi. As for the prices, we feed all segments, Jaba Zimistarishvili notes. Arkivi project was created with the support of TBC startup and the agency Enterprise Georgia. Subsidy damages Georgian viticulture and winemaking. Tamas Omanadze, the winemaker and founder of Homeless Marani, told BMG. As he noted, high-quality grapes in the country will not remain unsold, and the state should not interfere in private business in this way, because the country will get negative results from subsidies in the future. When I talk about state intervention, I don't mean natural disasters where the business needs support. The state announces the end of subsidies everywhere and always continues. It destroys Georgian viticulture and winemaking. We will get negative results of the subsidy in the future. This is damage, not assistance. Subsidies should be stopped from the next year. Many winemakers will look to the future. Agree with me, explained Tamas Omanadze. A restaurant was opened with 60,000 GLR investment in Eco Village in the forest. The founder of the hotel, Nino Nioradze, told BMG that the restaurant was launched in order to provide perfect service to the vacationers. Eco Village in the forest is located in the village of Kurgeniani in Lagodechi. There are no food facilities and grocery stores in the territory of the village, which hindered us to provide perfect service to the guests, so we decided to open a restaurant. Demand is very high, and we are focused on meeting the needs of the guests of our cottages, also other people who visit us, says Nioradze. Eco Village in the forest was created with the support of Enterprise Georgia and TBC Bank. The total investment of the project amounted to 365,000 GLR and currently includes 10 well-equipped cottages and a restaurant. The restaurant was built along with the cottages, and the founders spent 60,000 GLR on their equipping and renovation. Nicholas Benyanidze, the founder of dairy company Shiraki, declared that raw milk price would increase by 20% during the winter season due to the expensive feed and labor force. Benyanidze notes that currently raw milk price stood at 1.8 gelari, while the company has to increase its cost to 2 gelari to compensate the increased cost for farmers. If we don't give incentive and encourage the farmers, even 30% of milk that we produce will disappear. You know that 70% is imported while we have production potential, but the farmers need support. Products have become more expensive, but the farmer cannot get a proper price, cannot compensate the expenditures. Everyone has a loan. As for the price increase, I think that it will increase by 20% before January, while late April or May the price will come down. In this condition, the minimum raw milk price should be 2 gelari, which does not affect the products. If the farmer does not receive the appropriate amount, milk-producing companies will become distributors of powder or Iranian milk paste, said Benyanidze. Rachuli Wine Company Lomtatidze Family Wine increased its production by 20% compared to the last year, which had a positive impact on exports. As its co-founder Sofia Samteladze told BMG, they are satisfied with the current year's harvest. Interest in our wine has increased. Our desire was to grow production and we managed to do it. In addition to the local market, we have also increased exports. Compared to 2020, this year we will increase export figures by 30%, Samteladze explained. As for the price policy of the company, they will have to adjust the prices a little, although they don't know how much yet. 1,570 tons of Alexandroli and Mujuretuli grapes were processed in Ambrolauri municipality. About 1,300 wine growers handed over grapes to wine enterprises, and the received income reached 11 million gelari. In the current year, there were more than 60 private companies registered in Russia.
Chateau Mukhrani Palace, which renovation work started in 2016, was officially opened this week. Chateau Mukhrani is based on the historical tradition of winemaking in the Mukhrani region. This is the first and the only true Georgian royal chateau which unites four key components: vineyards, winery, palace, and history. During the Soviet time, Chateau Mukhrani was abandoned and almost destroyed. In 2002, a group of businessmen, Frederick Paulson and his companions, laid the basis for the restoration of the project of Chateau Mukhrani.
Well, I visited Georgia the first time about 20 years ago, and I got in contact with this group of investors that had just taken over. I think it was 5 or 6 investors who had taken over the chateau. And I became very interested. I think I thought it was a very interesting opportunity, so I became a very small minority shareholder. Over the years, it turned out that this was a much, much bigger project than the initial investors had anticipated. So, given my financial contribution, I became a larger and larger shareholder, and at the end, I became a 100% shareholder. And I can understand that, because many of the people who were partners, they were businessmen, and the money which are invested here will never really yield in investment. A large part of my investment here is more because of an emotional attachment. It's not that I ever will get back the money. And the other people who were partners, they were businessmen. They looked at it from a business point of view.
New Investment Group aims to create strong international brands which will serve as a profound representative of Georgian wine on the international market.
The chateau itself cannot just live here alone. We have to find a way of integrating the visitors to the chateau to the village. So we have had a lot of discussions with the municipal authorities, and we hope to come up with a joint project where we will, first of all, help develop the local village in terms of sports facilities, football grounds, stadiums. We also hope to be able to contribute to renovating the old buildings in the center of the city. And I think it's very important that we also help constructing a hotel here for visitors.
In total, the palace and its infrastructure occupy 16 hectares of land. Among its features are a forest, a French garden, a Georgian corner, a walnut alley, and a greenhouse. A major renovation and rehabilitation project is currently underway in the palace garden. The palace interior design in a modern context is a magnificent work of internationally acclaimed designer Juan Pablo Molinu, who creates worldwide famous luxurious interiors.
First of all, and the most important, was my first talk with Mr. Fredrik Paulsen to hear what he expressed of his idea of Chateau Mourani. And that was a main factor that interested me. That is not just the renovation of a building, but it is the consequence of that renovation, meaning to give to a country something that is quite important. And then I realized that it was not only important, but difficult, because we inherited, as I said before, a building that was, I wouldn't say abandoned, but I mean, it was, for many, many years, it was not taking care of what it was born as, like a residence for a prince, that it was quite important. And he got this building, as you all know, was designed by a French architect. And he had the vision of creating this winery, with, importing to Georgia, although Georgia was the birth of wine, but in re-importing all the technology of French winery making. And when I saw the building for the first time, that I was invited, as I said, by Mr. Paulsen, there was nothing much to really grab as what it was, the interior. So that decision was made instantly, that I couldn't do a fake restoration, historical restoration of an interior, but to get more in the minds of, at that time, in 1873 was this building built, at the end of the century, what was Georgia and how was Georgia seen by powerful people like Prince Ivan Mukherani Batoni, also. I'm sorry about the pronunciation. But anyway, that was the main point of start that we did, to say we will bring the building into a level that should have. I work closely with the Ministry of Culture, and we did a tour of some places in Georgia in order to see other buildings that could have been related to this. It was basically from the same time, and in order to find what I have done as a project, if I was in the track of Georgian culture in architecture. And we got a compromise, because also what I explained is that when this was built, as it was most of what was in here was imported. So it was very difficult to put that together on claiming that had to be just from, it wasn't something, it was something new perhaps, but at the same time was happening all over the world, and it was happening in Georgia also.
Molinu's interior design refers to the past with a twist of the unexpected, combining fantasy and centuries-old techniques to evoke the atmosphere of history. According to him, the age of Mukran Batoni has been brought back to life in full glory in the ballroom, the dining hall, the apartment, the Oriental and European rooms, the conference and tasting halls, and the library. In 2007, a major investment was made in the new winery of Chateau Mukhrani. Now it is equipped with ultra-modern technology. Along with the modern winery, Chateau Mukhrani's cellar was also reconstructed, returning to its unique origin, which has great historical value. Today, the cellar is fully reconstructed and stores more than 1,000 barrels of wine at a constant temperature of 16 Celsius. Since 2007, Chateau Mukhrani has been making wine from grapes harvested from its own vineyards, which is 100% organic. To make the wine more exquisite and truly unique, the winery receives grapes for processing maximum in 15 minutes from harvesting. Since 2011, wine tourism has become one of the main activities of Chateau Mukhrani, thanks to the extraordinary infrastructure, outdoor and indoor restaurants, horse stable, interesting history and exponents, convenient location. This palace soon became a prestigious and favorite place for thousands of Georgian and foreign visitors. Business, creative and entertainment events, tours, weddings and other activities attract thousands of Georgian and foreign visitors and customers.
Georgia is actually a very, very open country for foreign investments and business, and I think we are very lucky to be able to work in an environment which is not just open but also positive to foreign investment, and where we work in an environment which have very little corruption or almost no corruption, which has been one of the pleasures for us of working here.
And that's all for today. We'll meet on Sunday, 11 a.m. sharp, with more news and analysis on business and economics. Till then, follow us on BM.G and Forbes.G, and take care.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.